You can have millions in the bank and still look like an average person. No expensive cars, no designer clothes, no need to prove anything to anyone. Because when you understand real wealth, you stop trying to make people believe you have it. Let me start with something that may sound strange coming from a finance lesson. One of the strongest signs that you are becoming wealthy is that fewer people can tell. Think about that for a moment. Most people imagine wealth as something visible. They imagine the expensive car, the luxury watch, the giant house, the designer clothes, the first-class ticket, the perfect vacation photos, and the lifestyle that makes everyone else say, "Wow, they made it." But real financial progress often moves in the opposite direction. The more financially secure you become, the less you may feel the need to demonstrate it. And that is exactly what I want you to understand today. Because there is a massive difference between having money and looking like you have money. Looking rich is expensive. Being wealthy is powerful. Those two things can sometimes exist together, but they are not the same goal. If you earn $100,000 a year and spend almost everything trying to look like someone who earns $300,000, you may have the appearance of success without the financial foundation underneath it. But if you earn $100,000, live on $70,000, invest the difference, build emergency savings, eliminate expensive debt, and steadily acquire productive assets, you may look completely ordinary while becoming financially stronger every single year. Nobody on the street sees your investment account. Nobody at the grocery store sees your retirement portfolio. Nobody at the coffee shop sees your emergency fund. Nobody knows how much debt you don't have. Nobody sees the income you didn't spend. And nobody applauds the decision you made 3 years ago to keep driving an ordinary car because you knew that putting that money into assets would give you more freedom later. But that invisible progress is often where real wealth is built. We live in a world where people are constantly encouraged to display the results before they have built the foundation. Social media makes this even more powerful. You see the destination, but you don't see the balance sheet. You see the vacation, but you don't see the credit card statement. You see the luxury vehicle, but you don't know whether it is owned outright, financed, leased, or creating a monthly payment that quietly controls the owner's decisions. You see the house. You don't see the mortgage. You see the watch. You don't see the debt. You see the dinner. You don't see the financial stress waiting for the paycheck. And this is why I want you to stop using appearance as your measurement of wealth. If you are serious about becoming financially independent, you need a completely different scoreboard. The question isn't, how rich do I look? The question is, how much financial freedom am I actually building? That question changes everything. Because once you understand the difference between looking wealthy and becoming wealthy, you stop spending money to impress people who are not paying your bills. You stop upgrading your lifestyle every time your income increases. You stop treating every raise like permission to increase your monthly obligations. You stop believing that your financial success needs an audience. And something interesting begins to happen. You become quieter, not because you're ashamed of your money, not because you're pretending to be poor, but because you finally understand what money is supposed to do. Money is supposed to give you options. It is supposed to reduce your dependence on circumstances. It is supposed to give you the ability to handle emergencies without panic. It is supposed to give you the freedom to leave a toxic job. It is supposed to give you the ability to take time off when your family needs you. It is supposed to help you make decisions based on what matters instead of making every decision based on what you can afford this month. That's real wealth. And real wealth doesn't always make noise. In fact, some of the most important financial victories in your life will be completely invisible to other people. Imagine someone gets a raise of $20,000. The average reaction might be, "What are you going to buy?" A new car, a bigger apartment, better clothes, more expensive restaurants, a luxury vacation. But a financially disciplined person may ask a different question. What can this extra income do for my future? That person might increase investments, build cash reserves, pay off high-interest debt, increase retirement contributions, start a business, buy productive assets, or simply increase their margin between income and expenses. And here's the key. None of those decisions look exciting from the outside. Nobody gathers around and celebrates when you increase your savings rate. Nobody gives you a trophy for keeping your expenses stable. Nobody compliments you because you decided not to upgrade your car. But those boring decisions can completely change your financial future. This is where many people misunderstand wealth. They think wealth is primarily about consumption. It isn't. Wealth is about ownership. There is a huge difference between owning things that consume your money and owning things that can potentially produce value. A person can own a luxury vehicle, an expensive wardrobe, and a massive house and still have very little financial flexibility. Another person can drive a 10-year-old car, wear simple clothes, live in a modest home, and have substantial investments, low debt, and years of living expenses saved. Which person is richer? You can't answer that by looking at them. That's the point. You need the balance sheet. You need the cash flow. You need the assets. You need the liabilities. You need to understand how much freedom their financial position actually creates. This is why I want you to develop a private relationship with money, not secretive in a dishonest way, private in a disciplined way. You don't need to announce every investment you make. You don't need to tell everyone how much you earn. You don't need to explain every financial decision. You don't need to prove that you can afford something. And you certainly don't need to spend money simply because someone else expects you to. There is enormous power in being able to say, I could buy that, but I don't want to. That's a completely different level of financial maturity. When you can't afford something, saying no is easy. You have no choice. But when you can afford something and still say no because you understand opportunity cost, that's discipline. Let's say you have enough money to buy a $70,000 car. You can technically afford it. But the real question is not whether you can make the payment. The real question is what that $70,000 could become if you didn't spend it. That money could potentially remain invested. It could contribute to a down payment. It could strengthen your emergency reserves. It could provide business capital. It could give you flexibility during a career transition. The decision isn't simply car versus no car. It is this purchase versus every other opportunity that money could create. That is how financially intelligent people begin to think. They don't just ask, can I afford it? They ask, what does this decision cost me beyond the price tag? And that question is incredibly important because lifestyle inflation is one of the quietest ways people lose financial momentum. You make more money, then you spend more money, then you need more money, then you become dependent on the higher income, then you have less freedom than you expected. You earn $60,000 and survive on $50,000. Then you earn $90,000 and somehow need $80,000. Then you earn $130,000 and suddenly your lifestyle requires $120,000. Your income increased dramatically, but your freedom barely changed. Why? Because your expenses followed your income. This is why the financially wealthy often protect the gap between what they earn and what they spend. That gap is where wealth can grow. You need income, but income alone is not wealth. You need savings. You need ownership. You need time. You need discipline. You need reasonable risk management. And most importantly, you need to avoid destroying your progress simply to create an appearance. Because here's a painful truth. Some people are spending money to impress people who are also spending money to impress them. Think about how absurd that cycle is. You buy something because you want other people to think you're successful. They see it and assume you're successful. They then buy something because they want you to think they're successful. You see their purchase and assume they're successful. Now both of you are spending more money based on an assumption that may not even be true. That is how the status game works. And if you're not careful, you can spend your entire financial life participating in a competition that has no finish line. There will always be someone with a more expensive car, a larger house, a better vacation, a newer phone, a more exclusive restaurant, a bigger watch, a more impressive lifestyle. If your definition of success depends on being visibly ahead of other people, you have created a game you can never permanently win, because there will always be another level. But if your goal is freedom, the game changes. You don't have to beat everyone. You just have to build a financial life that works for you. Maybe your dream isn't a mansion. Maybe your dream is being able to take 6 months away from work without financial panic. Maybe your dream is owning your home. Maybe your dream is retiring earlier. Maybe your dream is helping your parents. Maybe your dream is starting a company without worrying about whether you can pay your bills next month. Maybe your dream is simply waking up on Monday and knowing that your employer doesn't control your entire life. Those things don't necessarily look impressive on Instagram, but they can be incredibly valuable, and that is why quiet wealth matters. Because the best financial asset may not be something you can show. It may be the ability to walk away. Think about the power of having enough savings that you don't have to accept every opportunity. Think about having enough investments that your future doesn't depend entirely on your next paycheck. Think about having low fixed expenses so that a temporary income problem doesn't become a financial disaster. Think about being able to tell yourself, I don't need this. That is freedom, and freedom changes your behavior. When you are financially desperate, you negotiate differently. You work differently, you tolerate different things, you make different decisions. You may stay in situations you hate because you can't afford to leave. But as your financial margin grows, your options grow. And when your options grow, your confidence often grows with them. That's one of the reasons wealth can change you. Not because money magically makes you a better person. Money doesn't guarantee wisdom. Money doesn't guarantee happiness. Money doesn't guarantee character. But financial security can reduce certain forms of pressure. And when you reduce financial pressure, you can sometimes make decisions from a position of choice rather than fear. That's incredibly valuable. So don't misunderstand the message. I'm not telling you that you should never enjoy your money. You absolutely should. Money is a tool. If you build wealth and never use it to improve your life, then you have misunderstood the purpose of the tool. Buy things you genuinely value. Travel if travel matters to you. Eat great food. Help people. Enjoy your family. Create experiences. Spend on things that make your life meaningfully better, but do it intentionally. Don't confuse enjoyment with performance. There is a difference between buying something because it genuinely improves your life and buying something because you want strangers to notice it. One creates personal value, the other creates social pressure. And when you stop performing wealth, you often discover something interesting. You start enjoying your money more. Why? Because you aren't constantly asking whether other people approve of your spending. You don't need the photograph. You don't need the compliment. You don't need the reaction. You can simply enjoy what you chose. That's a powerful psychological shift. You move from external validation to internal satisfaction, and that shift can affect everything. Your clothes, your car, your home, your vacations, your career, your friendships, your spending, even your definition of success. You begin asking, does this make my life better? Instead of, will this make me look successful? Those are completely different questions. And if you are building wealth right now, I want you to remember something. Don't become discouraged because your progress isn't visible. Maybe you haven't upgraded your car. Maybe your friends don't know how much you've saved. Maybe your family doesn't realize how much debt you've paid off. Maybe nobody knows that you're investing every month. Maybe nobody understands why you keep your lifestyle simple. That's okay. You are not building wealth for applause. You're building it for options. Your financial journey does not need an audience. In fact, sometimes protecting your financial privacy can help you make better decisions. When people know you have money, expectations can change. Suddenly, people may assume you can pay. They may assume you can lend. They may expect you to spend more. They may judge you differently. And while not everyone will behave this way, it is still reasonable to understand that financial information can change social dynamics. That doesn't mean you should distrust everyone. It means you should have boundaries. You are allowed to keep your finances private. You are allowed to say, that's not in my budget. You are allowed to live below your means. You are allowed to decline expensive plans. You are allowed to drive an ordinary car. You are allowed to wear the same clothes repeatedly. You are allowed to have money without displaying it. And you are allowed to become wealthy quietly. There is nothing impressive about looking rich while being financially fragile. But there is something powerful about being financially strong while needing no one to know. So I want you to rethink the way you measure your progress. Don't measure yourself against somebody else's lifestyle. Measure your savings. Measure your debt. Measure your investment contributions. Measure your net worth. Measure your financial runway. Measure how much of your income you keep. Measure how much of your future you are buying with today's decisions. And measure something else that people rarely talk about: how much peace your finances create. because that's a form of wealth too. If you can handle a surprise expense without panic, that's progress. If you can leave a bad job because you have financial reserves, that's progress. If you can help someone you love without destroying your own finances, that's progress. If you can take a vacation without putting it on debt, that's progress. If you can sleep at night without worrying about every paycheck, that's progress. None of these things need to be visible, but they are real. And eventually, if you stay consistent long enough, something extraordinary can happen. You may wake up one day and realize that the lifestyle you once dreamed about is no longer necessary to prove anything. You may still drive the same kind of car. You may still shop in the same stores. You may still eat at the same restaurants. But internally, you are different. Because you know that you have options. You know what you own. You know what you owe. You know what your money is doing. You know that your lifestyle isn't dependent on impressing anybody. And that is when money starts becoming less about status and more about freedom. So if you're listening to this and you're currently building wealth, don't worry if nobody notices. They don't need to. Let people underestimate you. Let them think you're ordinary. Let your financial statements tell the story that your lifestyle doesn't. Build quietly. Invest consistently. Control your expenses. Avoid unnecessary debt. Increase your earning power. Protect your downside. And give your money time to work. Because wealth isn't created by looking wealthy for a weekend. It's created by making intelligent financial decisions for years. And here's the final lesson I want you to remember. The goal isn't to become the person everyone thinks is rich. The goal is to become the person who doesn't need anyone to think anything. That's freedom. When you can walk into a room without needing to prove your income, that's freedom. When you can drive an ordinary car without feeling insecure, that's freedom. When you can say no to an expensive lifestyle without feeling embarrassed, that's freedom. When you can make financial decisions based on your values instead of social pressure, that's freedom. When you have enough wealth that your choices become larger than your paycheck, that's freedom. And perhaps the most powerful part is that nobody has to know. Because your wealth was never supposed to be a performance, it was supposed to be a foundation. So the next time you see someone showing off an expensive lifestyle, don't automatically assume they are wealthy. And the next time you see someone living simply, don't assume they aren't. You cannot see a person's net worth by looking at their clothes. You cannot see their investments by looking at their car. You cannot see their financial freedom by looking at their house. You cannot see their peace by looking at their Instagram. Wealth is often invisible, and that is exactly why you should stop building your financial life around things that are visible. Build the invisible things. Build the savings. Build the assets. Build the skills. Build the financial margin. Build the discipline. Build the freedom. Because one day, you may realize that the greatest luxury isn't owning something that makes everyone look at you. It's owning a life that allows you to stop caring whether they do. Nobody knows you're rich, and honestly, that may be the point. And once you reach that point, you begin to understand another important truth about money. Wealth gives you choices, but discipline determines whether you keep those choices. A large income can disappear surprisingly quickly when every dollar already has a destination before it even arrives. But when you create a gap between what you earn and what you spend, that gap becomes the engine of your financial future. It gives your money somewhere to go besides consumption. It can become investments, savings, business capital, or simply a larger cushion between you and financial emergencies. That is why I want you to stop thinking about wealth as a finish line. Wealth is not a number where you suddenly arrive and everything becomes perfect. It is a system. It is the result of repeatedly making decisions that increase your future options instead of reducing them. Every time you save instead of impulsively spending, every time you invest instead of chasing status, every time you avoid unnecessary debt, you are making a decision that your future self may benefit from. And here's something else that matters. The quieter your wealth becomes, the more important your financial habits become. When you stop using purchases as proof of success, you have to find another way to measure progress. That measurement should come from your financial position, not from other people's reactions. Ask yourself whether your net worth is improving. Ask whether your investments are growing. Ask whether your debt is declining. Ask whether your income is becoming more diversified. Ask whether you are becoming less dependent on a single paycheck. Those are the numbers that matter. You may reach a stage where your income increases, but your lifestyle barely changes. From the outside, people might think nothing happened. But internally, everything changed. Your savings rate improved, your investments became larger, your financial runway became longer. Your ability to handle uncertainty became stronger. You gained something that a new car cannot provide: time. And time is one of the most valuable assets money can buy. Think about what happens when you have 6 months of living expenses saved. Then imagine 1 year, then several years of investments and assets working in the background. Your relationship with work begins to change. You no longer view every paycheck as survival. You begin viewing income as a tool for building something bigger. That's a psychological transformation that most people never see because it happens privately. And this is why I want you to be careful about lifestyle comparisons. Someone might appear to be 10 steps ahead of you because they have a better car, a bigger home, or more expensive vacations. But you have no idea what their financial structure looks like. Maybe they're financially comfortable. Maybe they're heavily leveraged. Maybe they're spending everything they earn. Maybe they're building wealth quietly too. You simply don't know. So comparing your behind-the-scenes reality to someone else's public image is one of the fastest ways to make bad financial decisions. Your financial journey needs its own scoreboard. If your net worth went up this year, that's progress. If your debt went down, that's progress. If your emergency fund became stronger, that's progress. If you increased your income without increasing your lifestyle at the same speed, that's progress. If you started investing consistently, that's progress. If you learned how taxes, interest, investing, and cash flow work, that's progress. These victories might not receive a single compliment from another person, but they can change the direction of your life. And eventually, that is what wealth becomes: direction. You don't need to become wealthy overnight. You need to become financially stronger over time. The person who improves their financial position by a small amount every month can eventually become almost unrecognizable compared with the person who spends every raise trying to look successful. So, if you're currently living simply while building something behind the scenes, don't feel embarrassed by it. There is nothing wrong with being the person who doesn't have the newest phone, the newest car, or the most impressive wardrobe. If those things genuinely matter to you and you can afford them responsibly, enjoy them. But never allow someone else's definition of success to become a monthly bill that you have to pay. Because that's what happens when you start living for appearances. You turn opinions into expenses. Someone says your car is old, so you upgrade. Someone thinks your house is too small, so you move. Someone posts an expensive vacation, so you book one. Someone gets a luxury watch, so suddenly your perfectly good watch doesn't feel good enough. Someone earns more than you, so you feel behind. And before you realize it, your financial decisions are being made by people who don't even know your financial situation. That's not freedom. Freedom means you get to decide what your money means. Maybe your money means security. Maybe it means family. Maybe it means entrepreneurship. Maybe it means travel. Maybe it means retirement. Maybe it means having the ability to work fewer hours. Whatever it means to you, your spending should reflect your values rather than someone else's expectations. That is when your money becomes personal. And once your finances become personal, you don't need to announce every decision. You don't need to tell everyone what you're investing in. You don't need to reveal your salary. You don't need to explain why you're declining an expensive night out. You can simply say, "No, that's not what I want to spend money on." That sentence is more powerful than people realize, because every time you say no to something that doesn't matter to you, you're saying yes to something that does. You are saying yes to your future, yes to your freedom, yes to your financial security, yes to your options. And eventually, you may find yourself in a position where the things you used to fear financially no longer have the same power over you. A broken appliance becomes an inconvenience instead of a crisis. A temporary job loss becomes a challenge instead of a catastrophe. An unexpected bill becomes manageable. A career opportunity becomes possible. A move becomes an option. A break from work becomes realistic. That's what your money should be doing. It should be reducing the number of situations where you feel trapped. And the interesting part is that none of this requires you to look wealthy. You can build all of it quietly. You can build it from a modest apartment. You can build it while driving an ordinary car. You can build it while wearing simple clothes. You can build it while nobody around you realizes how much progress you're making. And maybe that's exactly the advantage. When nobody expects you to have money, you don't feel the same pressure to behave like you have money. You can continue building. You can continue learning. You can continue investing. You can continue improving your financial position without turning your life into a public performance. Then, one day, someone might look at you and say, You don't look rich. And instead of feeling insulted, you might smile because you finally understand. You were never trying to look rich, you were trying to become free. And when you stop trying to look rich, you also become more comfortable with making decisions that other people don't understand. Someone might wonder why you didn't buy the more expensive car after getting a raise. Someone might ask why you still live in the same neighborhood. Someone might be surprised that you don't wear expensive brands or constantly talk about investments. But you don't need every decision to make sense to everyone else. Your financial plan only needs to make sense to you. This is where maturity with money begins. You realize that every dollar has a job, and not every job has to be visible. Some money is there to protect you. Some money is there to grow. Some money is there to create experiences. Some money is there simply to give you breathing room. The mistake is assuming that every dollar must be used to create an immediate improvement in your lifestyle. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do with money is leave it alone. Let it compound. Let it accumulate. Let it create options. That can feel incredibly boring at first. You don't get an emotional reward every time you transfer money into an investment account. You don't get compliments when you increase your savings. You don't get attention when you pay down debt. But these quiet actions can eventually create results that are far louder than any purchase. Think about the difference between consumption and compounding. Consumption gives you something immediately. Compounding gives your money the opportunity to become more valuable over time. Neither is automatically good or bad, but if every extra dollar goes toward immediate consumption, you're constantly trading future possibilities for present satisfaction. And that trade becomes more expensive the more your income grows. If you receive an extra $10,000 and spend all of it, your lifestyle improves for a moment. If you save or invest a portion of it, you may be creating benefits that continue long after the initial decision. The goal isn't to deprive yourself. The goal is to make sure that your future isn't always paying for your present. This is why wealthy thinking often looks boring from the outside. It might look like someone saying no. It might look like someone keeping an old car. It might look like someone refusing to upgrade their apartment. It might look like someone spending an afternoon reviewing their budget instead of shopping. It might look like someone quietly investing every month while everyone else is trying to predict the next big opportunity. The person may not look wealthy, but their financial foundation may be getting stronger every month. You should enjoy your life. You should spend money on things that genuinely matter to you, but you should know why you're spending it. If you love traveling, travel. If you love great food, budget for great food. If you value a comfortable home, spend more on your home. If you love cars, enjoy cars responsibly. The problem begins when you're spending money on things you don't even care about simply because you're afraid of looking unsuccessful. That is one of the most expensive psychological mistakes you can make, because you are not buying the object. You're buying approval. And approval has no permanent price. There will always be another person to impress, another standard to reach, another lifestyle to copy, another level of consumption. That's why the richest looking person in the room isn't necessarily the wealthiest person in the room. The person with the most expensive lifestyle might have the least financial flexibility. And the person sitting quietly in the corner might have years of expenses saved, substantial investments, and no need to prove anything. You can't tell from appearances. That's why financial education matters. You need to understand the difference between income, savings, assets, liabilities, cash flow, and net worth. A high income can make wealth easier to build, but it doesn't guarantee wealth. A modest income doesn't make wealth impossible, although it can make the process more difficult. What matters is what happens between the money coming in and the money going out. If you earn more but spend even more, your financial position may become weaker. If you earn more and keep your expenses controlled while consistently building assets, your financial position can become stronger. That's the equation you should care about. And this is why one of the best things you can do is create a lifestyle that costs less than your income. Not because you want to live cheaply forever, but because the difference gives you leverage. Leverage in your finances means having room to make choices. If your expenses consume every dollar you earn, you have almost no room for mistakes. If your expenses are comfortably below your income, you have flexibility. That flexibility can become savings. Savings can become investments. Investments can potentially produce future income. And future income can create even more flexibility. That's how the cycle begins. It doesn't begin with a luxury car. It begins with margin. And once you have margin, you can start making decisions from strength instead of desperation. You can take a calculated risk. You can invest in education. You can start a side business. You can negotiate your salary. You can move to a better opportunity. You can take time to recover from burnout. You can help your family without putting your own financial future at risk. Again, none of this necessarily looks impressive, but it is incredibly valuable. And this is why I want you to become comfortable with invisible progress. Maybe this month nobody notices anything. That's okay. Maybe this year your lifestyle looks almost identical to last year. That's okay. If your financial position improved, you won. If your assets increased, you won. If your debt decreased, you won. If your financial knowledge increased, you won. If you became more disciplined, you won. You don't need to make every victory public. In fact, some victories become stronger when you keep them private, because the moment you start announcing every financial milestone, expectations can follow. People may expect you to spend differently. They may expect you to give more. They may expect you to maintain a certain image. And suddenly, your wealth becomes a social obligation instead of a personal resource. That's why privacy can be valuable. You don't have to lie about your finances. You simply don't have to make them everyone's business. There is a difference. Your financial life belongs primarily to you. And as your wealth grows, protecting your peace becomes more important. Because money can solve financial problems, but it can also create social complications when people begin attaching expectations to it. You might discover that some relationships change when people believe you have money. You might receive requests you didn't expect. You might feel pressure to pay for things. You might feel guilty for saying no. You might even begin questioning whether someone appreciates you or what they think you can provide. This is another reason quiet wealth can be psychologically powerful. It allows you to separate your financial identity from your social identity. You can be a friend without being a financial resource. You can be a family member without becoming everyone's emergency fund. You can be successful without making your success the center of every relationship. Boundaries aren't selfish. They're part of financial maturity. And the more wealth you build, the more important those boundaries can become. But don't let privacy turn into fear. You shouldn't live in constant paranoia about money. You should simply be intentional. Know who needs to know. Know what needs to be shared. Know what should remain private. And most importantly, don't allow wealth to change your character. Money should increase your options, not reduce your humanity. If you become wealthier, but become obsessed with status, you haven't necessarily become financially wiser. If you become wealthier but constantly fear losing everything, you may still be psychologically trapped. If you become wealthier but can't enjoy your life, you've missed something important. The purpose of financial independence isn't to spend your entire life staring at a spreadsheet. It's to create enough stability that you can focus more of your energy on the things that actually matter. Your family, your health, your relationships, your purpose, your work, your creativity, your experiences, your time. Money is a tool. Treat it like one. Don't worship it. Don't ignore it. Don't use it as your identity. Use it to build a life that you actually want. And if that life looks ordinary from the outside, that's perfectly fine. Because ordinary on the outside can be extraordinary on the inside. A simple home can contain financial freedom. An old car can sit in the driveway of someone with substantial investments. A basic wardrobe can belong to someone who has spent years building assets. A quiet person can have more financial security than the loudest person in the room. Never confuse visibility with value. The loudest financial signal is not always the strongest one. Sometimes the strongest signal is silence. And if you are currently building wealth quietly, keep going. Don't let the absence of applause convince you that you're not making progress. The market doesn't care whether your friends know you're investing. Compound growth doesn't care whether your neighbors think you're successful. Your savings account doesn't care whether someone thinks your lifestyle is impressive. Your future doesn't need their approval. Your future needs your consistency. So keep making the decisions that your future self will thank you for. Keep the expenses you don't need out of your life. Keep building your emergency reserves. Keep investing according to a sensible plan. Keep improving your earning power. Keep learning. Keep protecting your financial margin. And don't rush to turn every financial improvement into a lifestyle upgrade. Sometimes the best upgrade is simply becoming harder to financially break. That's a kind of wealth people can't see. But you can feel it. You feel it when the unexpected bill arrives and you don't panic. You feel it when your employer makes a decision you disagree with and you know you have options. You feel it when you can take time off without wondering how you'll survive. You feel it when you can help someone you love without destroying your own financial stability. You feel it when you stop checking your account with fear. You feel it when money becomes a tool instead of a source of constant anxiety. That's the point. Not the watch, not the car, not the house, not the applause, the freedom. And when you finally understand that, you may discover that you don't actually want everyone to know you're rich. You might prefer that they simply know you're happy. You might prefer that they know you're reliable. You might prefer that they know you're present. You might prefer that they know you have time. Because wealth that gives you more time with the people you love is worth far more than wealth that only gives you something to show them. And that is why nobody knowing you're rich can actually be the point. You aren't hiding the money because you're ashamed of it. You're protecting the freedom it creates. You aren't refusing to show off because you can't afford to. You're refusing because you don't need the validation. You aren't living below your means because you failed to become successful. You're living intentionally because you understand what success actually costs. And eventually, your financial life may become so strong that you don't need to explain it at all. No announcement, no performance, no proof, just options, just freedom, just peace. Real wealth is often built in silence. It is built when you save money nobody sees, invest money nobody knows about, pay off debt without announcing it, and make financial decisions based on your future instead of someone else's opinion. The world may notice your car, your clothes, or your house, but those things don't tell the full story. Your real wealth is found in your assets, your financial security, your freedom, your choices, and the amount of control you have over your own time. So stop measuring your success by how impressed other people are. Measure it by how financially independent you're becoming. If you can say no without fear, walk away without panic, handle emergencies without falling apart, and make decisions without constantly asking, "Can I afford this?" you are building something far more valuable than an impressive lifestyle. And remember, the goal was never to convince people that you're rich. The goal was to build a life where you don't need their approval. So build quietly. Let your investments grow quietly. Let your savings grow quietly. Let your net worth grow quietly. You don't need applause for every smart financial decision you make. Because one day, you may realize that the greatest luxury isn't having everyone know you're wealthy. It's having enough wealth that nobody needs to know. That is when money stops being a performance and finally becomes freedom.